these people want complete control over our lives. They want to try to establish that power hierarchy. They're pretty much doing everything possible to make that happen. They said if people are allowed to say no to the digital euro, it will fail. They're basically saying our idea is so good that we need to force everyone to use it. A lot of central bankers will say that CBDCs are just the next evolution of money, but that's not right. They're the next evolution of state control, and that's a very different thing. Secretary of the Department of Treasury, Scott Bessent, said, if anyone doesn't like it, if they don't like the rules, they can just get out.
What's happening in the US? This is our last citadel in a way. I mean, El Salvador feels like a citadel right now.
The land of the free, the home of the brave.
Exactly.
It's tough. It's changed a lot. People aren't using Bitcoin because they're forced to. It's because they want to. They see the value. They see what it gives them in return for using it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of You're the Voice. I have the honor of being here with my already guest on the show once, right? We've had Nick Anthony. Hey Nick, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to be back here again. So nice. We're doing it twice.
I know, it's great, but here's a little secret for all my audience that is going with me for a long time now. You know that if I find something good, I stick to it. So I love what Nick is doing, and we share a lot of the same weird hobbies in terms of like following central banks and CBDC tracking and all that. So I have offered Nick to come on the show every quarter and do this as a regular thing so that we can get updates directly from, for me, the number one expert on the topic. So we're going to see Nick every quarter on the show. So, stay tuned. Thanks for agreeing, Nick.
Absolutely.
This is awesome. So just before we hit record, we just started by saying that, it's over. Bitcoin's done.
It's
Tell us.
Done. They just finished it up. They're wrapping up the paperwork now. Like you said, the Financial Times declared it, so it is official. There's no denying it. I know some folks might feel tempted to check their wallets, check their accounts. Don't bother. It's done. Over.
It's over.
We're going to need a new
That's
hobby.
it. I'm
personally thinking woodworking, but I'm on the fence.
So, to all those people watching us that are new to Bitcoin or maybe not even in, and they're influenced by the news, by the price, the dollar price of Bitcoin. First of all, if you're on my podcast, you know that the dollar price of Bitcoin is probably the thing I care the least about. If you've watched my episode with Jeff Booth that we did recently, we talked extensively about the perception of Bitcoin as an asset versus Bitcoin as money. And I think you should go back and watch it again just to get grounded a little bit more in what Bitcoin is here for really, which is to really free us from the financial enslavement that we've been experiencing for ever and ever. And so relax. Like if you're here just because of the dollar price, just relax, just chill. Just leave it, just focus on what you do best in life. Nick, I'll just, for those of you that, are jumping in and don't know us, first of all, go and see my previous episode with Nick, which was about, I think, 20 or so episodes ago. So if we're at around 130 now, it should be around 100, 110. We did it in Lugano. It was fantastic. But now we're going to dive a bit deeper. And for those of you who don't know, Nick is a policy analyst at Cato Institute, a fellow at the Human Rights Foundation, and one of the clearest voices dissecting CBDCs, financial privacy, and government overreach. And he authored a book called Digital Currency or Digital Control. Do you have the book next to you?
Oh, I'm such a terrible author.
I
I hate that you just called me out like that because I was thinking, Oh, I
Should I
should have
have the
done the
book?
author thing and held it up right then.
And, you know, he's one of the biggest advocates I know for freedom and privacy. So, again, welcome on the show, Nick. Let's start with what you're seeing these days on the clamping down of our human rights and the introduction of the new type of money or currency into our life, the central bank digital currency, and all the siblings of that technology.
Well, I know folks that are regular listeners to the show don't really need me to hammer this in because they know all too well that in the financial realm, human rights is becoming a bigger concern almost every day. And that's through governments coming in, realizing this is somewhere they can clamp down, they can target people, and they can cut off their access to the wider world. We see that with protests in Russia, in Belarus, in Canada, and the like. And it's not something that's limited to authoritarian regimes. It's not something limited to the worst of the worst. It's spreading all over. And sadly, central bank digital currencies are quickly being positioned as the next evolution in that, the next evolution of control. And one thing that has really turned out to be a big trend is this idea of just forcing people to use it. In the European Union, which many folks hold up as a democracy, they're saying left and right that the digital euro will be forced onto people, that people will be forced to use it. I mean, in a sentence that almost left me, almost at a loss for words. There were 70 economists who came out in support of the digital euro, saying that Europe needs this. It's going to make Europe strong. This is the next way forward. And one really curious line in there was that they said, if people are allowed to say no, the digital euro will fail.
What? Are you serious? That is written?
I'm 100% serious. It's out there. I actually I joked about the Financial Times earlier. I will give them credit. They were kind enough to publish my rebuttal to this, and
I'm lost for words, dude. I see these things all the time and I post them, but this is a new level. Can you repeat that sentence again?
They said if people are allowed to say no to the digital euro, it will fail. And let me just say that differently, because that is like, it's almost hard to get your head around that. They're basically saying our idea is so good that we need to force everyone to use it. That's it. And if we don't force people, then it's going to be an absolute failure. And at the heart of that, it's almost like you're proposing something that people don't want. And look, that's okay. It's okay to make proposals, to float ideas. Everyone has obscure preferences that not everyone is going to agree with. And sure, that's okay. It's like if you start a business where I drop all of this. I'm done with CBDCs. I'm done with policy. I want to do woodworking. I'm just going to sell little wooden statues. And maybe I'll do it of central bankers. If I find out that this is not a good business idea because no one wants to buy my little figurines of Jerome Powell or Christine Lagarde, I'm going out of business. It's done. It's over.
The market will decide.
Exactly. Here, you have people saying that the government is in a unique position because it has a monopoly on violence, a monopoly on force. And so it needs to use that force to dictate how people are living their lives and effectively forcing them to buy those little wooden figurines. Now, at least if it was little wooden figurines, they just sit on the desk or go in a junk drawer or something like that. But unfortunately, what we're talking about is something that's core to everything we do in life.
So one thing is their product is probably not great, so they have to coerce people to use it. And secondly, they understand the mechanism of money, and they know that money needs the majority of the population using the one money. They know it. And they know that if people will not flock in to this new way of doing money, they'll fail. So they're preparing themselves for success by saying in advance, this is going to be blanket coerced on everyone. And they're going to do it through small businesses, through salaries, through taxation, through fines, through everywhere they can, all the tools they can, public sector, all that stuff. And then later it will be like COVID. But at the
one
beginning,
of the places that we see this is the European Parliament and European Central Bank have started with payment service providers. So people that handle digital accounts, money service businesses, banks, and the like. And they've already started working out the idea of how if you have an app with your bank, it'll be forced to have a digital euro section. So you open up your bank account, and then on the side, you're going to see a drop down for the digital euro. And they're forced to make that, to go through all the steps to make sure it's compliant, it's set up the right way, that they have their IT infrastructure there.
Of course.
And they have no say over it. They have no say.
No, of course.
None of their customers will use it, and yet they're forced to offer this service. And nowhere else
what does this remind us, Nick? Well, there is one place it would happen. Remember the example from China with WePay and Alipay and WeChat?
Yes.
Sorry, WeChat and Alipay. So the government told them this has to be implemented. And overnight, you have 800 million wallets in China accepting the EU1, the ECNY, which is their CBDC. Magic! We just forced the biggest payment service providers to implement it, and now we can claim we have 800 million users of the CBDC.
And I mean, this gets back to why Bitcoin is not over by any means. It's so tough to build these networks. It's so tough to build a network where you can use any money at the drop of a hat without any frictions. That takes a really long time to do. And some people might look at China's success and say, oh, look, they defeated Bitcoin. But the difference is people aren't using Bitcoin because they're forced to. It's because they want to. They see the value. They see what it gives them in return for using it. And it's a long road. It's a longer road, but that is the right road to go on when the question is helping free people live their best lives versus forcing people to live the life someone else wants them to live. Those are the two paths. And unfortunately, time and time again, and we see this all throughout the history of money, governments have chosen one path over the other, and that's been force.
Absolutely. What else can you tell us about the 70 economists and their letter to the EU? What else did they come up with?
So one of the things in there,
I just saw your article this morning on Substack. So you guys, I will put the link to Nick's Substack in the show notes. So go subscribe to his newsletter because it's very good. And he doesn't have the amount of followers that he needs to have. Like this guy needs to have 10,000 followers of his mailing list by the end of this year. So please go be the people that are making it happen.
And I promise I will not write to my local congressman to make it against the law to not follow me. So only follow if you like it. But thank you.
Yes.
One of the other arguments that we see, and this morning I was actually tuned into a session at the European Parliament where this came up over and over too. So the 70 economists didn't invent this by any means, but it's the argument that Europe has lost its sovereignty. It's lost its sovereignty because a lot of payments in Europe are routed through Visa and MasterCard, which are American companies. And so the argument is that a digital euro is needed to reclaim that sovereignty, to bring payments back into Europe. And I think that's a very easy set of steps to jump to. But I really want to warn people against this thinking for a few reasons. One of them is that you have to remember the consumer on the ground. People aren't using Visa and MasterCard because they were forced to. It's not because of that. It's because it's offering a service that they appreciate. In the same way, if people are using Bitcoin, it's not because they were forced to, it's because it offers a service that they appreciate. And on the other side of it, you have to ask, why aren't there businesses that can compete with Visa and MasterCard in the European Union? And two easy answers to that are, one, it's how fragmented the regulatory system is, where you get this kind of misnomer of it being a single market, because in many ways you have to be abiding by regulations in each member country. It's not a one size fits all. And then also, for the regulations that are there, even if you set aside all the duplicative work, all the unique rules in each jurisdiction, it's also just a lot. I mean, frankly, just ask anyone that's trying to run a Bitcoin business how much of a headache it is to establish yourself in the European Union. And then when you look at that, it's like, well, instead of inventing something new, why not just get out of the way? Why not let European businesses flourish and really compete? But unfortunately, the European Central Bank and many other European officials have sort of decided, well, the digital euro is the answer. And it's sad to see that, because there are solutions that could have been made a decade ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I mean, solutions really across the world, not just limited to the Eurozone, that could have fixed a lot of these types of problems. And for some reason, officials just don't want to let up that control.
Ever find yourself needing cash but refusing to sell your Bitcoin? That's real life for many Bitcoiners, because most Bitcoin sales aren't financial decisions, they're liquidity decisions. And that's exactly what Ledn solves. Ledn is the global leader in Bitcoin-backed lending. They've issued over $10 billion in loans since 2018 with a perfect track record for protecting client assets. Here's what makes Ledn different. With their custodied loans, your Bitcoin collateral is not lent out to generate interest. No credit checks, no monthly payments, and no penalties for early repayments. You apply in minutes and you repay whenever you want. Ledn also publishes proof of reserves reports every 6 months with full transparency. So if your capital is in Bitcoin, but your expenses are not, you still have options. Ledn lets you unlock liquidity without selling your Bitcoin. Learn more at ledn.io/Efrat. That's ledn.io/Efrat. You're the Voice is brought to you by Trezor, the original Bitcoin hardware wallet company pioneering the development of self-custody for crypto assets since 2013, empowering individuals with an open-source device, enabling beginners and experts to easily and securely hold their coins. I find my Trezor super easy to use and recommend it to my friends and family. Enjoy my 5% discount on Trezor products by clicking the link in the show notes and using the code EFLAT.
No, and also it feels like Europe has forgotten the people forgotten what it is to be sovereign, because they keep being just complacent and capitulate to whatever the authorities say. We've seen it during COVID. We're seeing it again now. I mean, there are always great groups of people and pockets of resistance throughout the EU and in other places, but it's just, they are so authoritarian now, and they're declaring that China is the blueprint. It's no longer Klaus Schwab saying it over the stage in the World Economic Forum. It's like Christine Lagarde going to China, shaking hands, doing the tour of duty, showing that they're following the best playbook that there is today for CBDC, which is China. And no one's like questioning that. It doesn't ring an alarm bell. Oh, hold on. Is China a good place to mimic? And I remember 10 years ago when my mom or someone would say something about China, it would, not 10, 20 years ago, it would feel like such a harsh example to give, she would, oh, in China they do that, it would be like, oh my God, this is like the dystopian thing we need to stay away from. And today, when people talk about China, and again, obviously to put it in context, there are some good people always and good happening in China, but I'm talking about the regime. I'm talking about the authoritarianism. This is, and totalitarianism. This is the road to serfdom, right? That Hayek, was it Friedrich Hayek was talking about? I read the book. This is exactly how we roll. And if we forget that those regimes are regimes that oppress people and take away their basic human rights, then, and we just look at the good stuff that's coming out of there, good in terms of like technological innovation and things like, or how to control people, then come on, wake up. Like, what's going on?
It's really unfortunate, the culture shift that we've seen in a lot of places, but Europe especially in that regard, because a lot of people have they've fallen for the slow boil. It's just one edition after another. And because of that, a lot of people have become very accepting and very trusting of officials in power, and without a lot of recourse when things go wrong. And again, you'll have officials say, just trust us, we'll do the right thing. And even if I set aside my pessimism that I don't trust people with that much power, if I set that aside, there's still the fact that they are not always going to be the ones in control. We have to always keep in mind that for all her promises, Christine Lagarde is not going to be leading the European Central Bank until the end of time. The same thing here in the United States. Jerome Powell is not going to be leading the Federal Reserve for all of time. In fact, it seems his term is going to come short quite soon. And despite him being against CBDCs, the person that was nominated to take his place has actually proposed introducing a CBDC in the United States just a few years ago in the Wall Street Journal. So that does quite illustratively show that power changes hands, and sometimes that change is drastic.
100%. I want to ask you about the CBDC tracker. You're doing like a quarterly update, and if people don't know, there's a great website. Just Google CBDC tracker HRF, and you'll get to this website where you can actually, you know what? Let's do it so that people can see it. 1 second, let me share screen. So this is the CBDC tracker. We're not here to debate flat Earth and all that stuff. Let's assume this is. Let's assume it's a circle.
I call this entertaining Earth. Because one of the things I wanted with this design was exactly what's happening to you right now, is that you feel the need to click around on it and explore. If nothing else, I hope it brings folks joy just in exploring the globe and seeing it through a slightly different lens.
I love it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to just browse this. We were talking about China just before. Where is it? There we go. Hold on. Hello. If you want to see what China CBDC looks like, you have this. Freedom House Index, 0.9 out of 10. Of course, we're very close to the zero. Okay, what kind of updates do you have for us on the CBDC tracker site?
Well, we've talked about a lot of dark things, so let me pick it up a little bit with some good news. To start with, and that's Norway and South Africa have both joined the list of countries who are saying no to CBDCs. They did research, they even did pilots, and when they looked at it, they said, this doesn't work for us. This isn't something that's going to help our people. And this might be a shock to hear. They realized that digital money or digital payments exists, and that people are using it already, so the government doesn't need to come in and reinvent the wheel. Now, as any politician will do, they left a foot in the door and said, we're not committing to anything, we're not binding our hands by any means. But right now, there's really not a case for this. In South Africa, for example, they said, drawing on years of research, we find that a CBDC is technically feasible, but there's no compelling need to introduce one. And this is now joining the ranks of Canada, Colombia, Australia, and the United States. So right there's 7 countries who have taken a pretty firm stance to say that a CBDC is just not for them. And that's something to definitely be welcomed. I'm hoping that more get added to that list soon, but it's a nice change of pace when the past few years, policymakers have been losing their mind over this. They've been thinking, we need to introduce a CBDC. We need to do this now. No questions asked. Now we have people that are starting to wake up to the music, which is a really nice change of pace. Still small, but it's making a chip in that iceberg.
Okay, good. I want to push back on something though. I mean, yes. South Africa, Norway, I don't know enough, and I'm with you because also I know that in South Africa there's a huge adoption of Bitcoin. So people are really not waiting for the regulator to tell them what to do. And there's a really beautiful grassroots movement that is implementing Bitcoin as payment already in the country. But Canada, Australia, 2 countries specifically that are going down the authoritarian regime. I just came back from Australia, and I don't know if you've seen my latest reports and videos. I was blocked from Substack when I was there because there is a new legislation around age verification, presenting your digital ID to prove that you are under 16 when you go to your Substack, for example, which, thank you very much for the compliment, Substack, but I am over 16. Anyway, due to that legislation, the Online Safety Act, which is introduced in places like the UK and the DSA in the EU, and Canada is working on similar bills. There's a clamping down on our access to information, our access to finance. I mean, this is information, but you cover the finance. There's a very small gap between the two.
Yes.
And when they're doing those things on information and access to the internet and all that, they're doing this with KYC and AML and all the other stuff like the Patriot Act and whatever in the US, in Canada and in Australia. And in Australia, they are working on a CBDC. It's true that they said that we don't need it right now. There is no compelling excuse for it, but they continue working on it.
Yes.
And
so 2 quick
who
points
knows
on
what
that.
will happen. Yes.
First, for folks watching, if you have criticism of me, please deliver it this way. I want all criticism this way because this is the best pushback I've ever gotten. 2, it's the best criticism.
It's not personal.
It's the best criticism I've ever
gotten. It's against Australia and Canada, not against you.
No, because I agree 100% with you. I agree 100% on a few things. So just because they've said no now, do not take that as it's final or anything else. And just because they've said no in this instance, do not take that as they're not going too far in other places. This is not the be-all, end-all human rights tracker. It's only within the lens of central bank digital currencies. And frankly, a lot of countries go pretty darn far within the financial realm without crossing that level or that line into CBDC territory. So there's a lot of abuses that take place. And I try to document most of them that I can in there. But you're absolutely right that Canada and Australia, quite frankly, surprised me when they made their announcements because it seemed like exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
I think
that's why I'm not buying it. That's why I don't believe them. I'm just waiting.
And also, you just reminded me, there's one other thing I want to touch on. Anywhere that places have stopped, or rather said no to CBDCs, it's really important to be mindful of exactly what you just said, is they haven't really stopped. They've just said that it's not happening right now in terms of launching one. but they're still doing research, and sometimes they're even still doing pilots on the back end. It might not be a burning priority, but really right now, the United States is the only country who has taken a really aggressive stance and said the government cannot research this, cannot pilot this, cannot do anything with this. Everyone else is in kind of a gray area where it's a politician's promise. It's something they've offered up, but I would not bet the house on it. So I'm reveling in the good news that there's change, but you're absolutely right that we should not be lulled to sleep at the same time. There's still a lot of work to do.
Okay, good. Let's stay alert. What about the Clarity Act in the US? And what can you tell us about the introduction of stablecoins as a backdoor to a CBDC mindset or a CBDC kind of world in the US without calling it a CBDC?
So Clarity did a lot, or Clarity, Genius, the market
Genius,
structure, and stablecoin bills. They've done a lot, but the pieces that I want to focus on to draw people's attention to is the Banque Secrecy Act component. And that's the piece of it that talks about surveillance and control, really. And what they sort of did in a overly simplified way is try to make it more like bank accounts. Really try to make it like all the wrong things with banks right now, that they have to do KYC checks, that know your customer information. They have to surveil you for suspicious activity. They have to report activity over certain transactions. It's really roping it into the existing banking system and making it look like that. And that's where I have a little bit of trouble. And I admittedly, I think I told you this in Lugano, I hate this because I'm so happy to see that people are speaking out and getting concerned about what's happening. But I don't want us to lose sight that, one, the banking system's bad. The way it's surveilled and controlled is bad. And it's bad that they're making stablecoins and other cryptocurrencies like that. And at the same time, though, going to a full CBDC is worse. And so I don't want to down anyone for being passionate about the space, but I do want to make sure that we keep in mind those distinctions are kept in mind, because otherwise it all just becomes a mess. And already, and I'm happy to get into this as well, the CBDC tracker, one thing that makes me get quite a few new gray hairs is just figuring out how some countries are trying to say that it's not a CBDC, what we're launching. It's something else. For example, the Marshall Islands and a few other jurisdictions have explicitly launched what they call stablecoins. Those stablecoins are absolutely CBDCs. They are run by the government. It's not the government regulating someone. It's 100% government run. And that
Where,
is a CBDC.
For example, Nick?
For Marshall Islands. So out in the Pacific.
Islands. Okay.
And it's a little bit of a dance because they don't have a central bank. So that's part of the reason they're playing with the terminology. But if a government
Which currency
is running
do they use?
I'm sorry?
Which currency do they use?
Oh gosh.
Fiat.
It is fiat. I think they might be dollarized.
Who owns the Marshall Islands? I mean, owns. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, they are their own.
Which empire?
They are their own jurisdiction. They just don't. And this is something that happens with a lot of.
They just don't have a central bank.
Yeah, this is something that happens with a lot of the Pacific Islands and really a lot of smaller island communities.
Yeah, because you don't need a central bank.
Yes, for example, the Caribbean, the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, they have one central bank for all of them, even though they're all distinct entities making up both territories and countries. Okay,
interesting. And you're saying, so that kind of stablecoin is a CBDC, it's just a different name.
Yes, there's a little bending of the hard textbook definitions, but a clear way to think of it, really at its simplest, is this a digital currency directly issued by the government where the government has absolute control over it? We can get more in the weeds with other definitions, but that's a good way to think about this. And so if you see China announces a new stablecoin, first question you need to ask, is this Ripple that's doing this? Or is this the People's Bank of China doing this?
Yeah.
Because you can have problems with both of them.
Yeah.
But it's only with the second one that it's a true CBDC, no matter what they want to call it.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good way to distinguish it. And so I'm going back to the US when we have a set of rules and legislations around stablecoins in the US, you know, as you said, roping them to the banking establishment and to the state in the way they do. The freedom element, the relative freedom you would get with a stablecoin is being a little bit eroded with that legislation. And even if the control is not direct, the government control is not direct because it goes through a third party that issues that stablecoin, there is still quite a good control of the government where they can just knock on the door and say, hey, close this down, censor this, or sanction, you know, those countries or those people or whatever. And that is being done already with Tether today, and that will continue to be done. And now that you're seeing that Tether is issuing a second stablecoin domestically in the US so that they can be compliant with the new legislation, it just, you know, everything is now getting the kind of blessing of the state. The state said, this is how it needs to be done. We are now adapting ourselves to the legislation. Now, obviously, I'm not against following the rules in the country that you live in, but it's like we are now in the state, that's what it feels to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, adapting systems that are out there that used to be relatively free, adapting them into the reality of a controlled state.
I want to introduce you to Abundant Minds because they take a very different approach to Bitcoin mining. Most people buy Bitcoin, but the smart ones mine it straight into self-custody. With Abundant Minds, you can do it without giving up your privacy. Abundant Minds was founded by Bo and Christine Marie Turner, a couple who lost more than $500,000 to providers making empty promises. Instead of walking away, they built a company that raises the industry standard and puts client first, and that's why I like them. With Abundant Minds, you own your machines. They never touch your Bitcoin, never skim a revenue share, and you choose your own mining pool. Their customer care is unusual. Clients speak to a real person for self-custody education, privacy consulting, and even visiting their site. They serve clients from around the world, but US investors specifically enjoy a big tax benefit and 100% bonus depreciation. This is more than just mining Bitcoin. It's about freedom, privacy, and purpose. You can book a free strategy call, see how it works, and mine some of your first Bitcoin for free with a special offer for my audience. Learn more on abundantminds.com/Efrat. In a world hypnotized and sleepwalking towards totalitarian control and digital enforcement, awakened voices rise to inspire change and radiate hope. In December 2024, I had the honor of hosting Professor Matthias Desmet at a conference I produced called New Totalitarian Order. This masterclass is now recorded and available to watch. The conference explores the psychology behind global mass processes, offering a behind-the-scenes look at science, economics, and human potential. It addresses challenging global agendas, mass formation, transhumanism, consciousness, societal change, and the path to transformation. Click the link in the show notes to access 3.5 hours of exclusive presentations, in-depth content, and my fireside chat with Professor Desmet. Use my code EFRAT for 10% off. I hope you find great value in it.
I think that's a fair way to put it. And that's why I won't spoil it, even though I often do. At the end of my book, I touch on exactly this. And when I'm not fighting CBDCs here in the US or around the world, I'm fighting the Bank Secrecy Act, because the fight does not end with CBDCs. There's still so much freedom to be reclaimed in this space. And I think you're absolutely right that, unfortunately, we are witnessing what was a tool of freedom be roped in and limited from its true potential. And it's really sad to see that. And just last week, the Secretary of the Department of Treasury, Scott Bessent, said if anyone doesn't like it, if they don't like the rules, they can just get out. And respectfully, I'm going to stay here and fight against it. I'm not going to run from this. It's something that needs to be changed. And he may want to build a legacy of financial surveillance and control, but I'd like to build a legacy of financial freedom. And that's something we can do. But what's so important is having conversations and having you get these conversations out into the world so people know that there is something worth fighting for. Because most people, they have no idea that any of this is going on. Most people just look at it and they go about their day. They don't realize that this stuff is buried in pieces of legislation, buried in speeches, or in 100-page articles on central bank websites. But it's all right there. It's all right in front of you. You just have to be willing to take that step forward to grab it and see it for what it is.
Amen. And I'm quite surprised. I mean, I'm surprised, not surprised with Bessent's comment. Again, the mandate of the state on power.
Well, this is one of my favorite parts about when, so working for the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank, is that I get to work with Republicans, I get to work with Democrats. I get to have both sides like me at some point in the day and hate me at another point in the day. And his speech was a very illustrative example of that, because I loved when he said they will not issue a central bank digital currency. They will not do it. Yet I hated when at another point in the conversation, he was saying actually the exact quote was, "I don't read the Cato Institute and I believe in financial surveillance." And
he said that?
That's a verbatim quote. A member of Congress had asked him what he thought of me saying he's building a legacy of financial surveillance and control. And his response was, "I do not read the Cato Institute, but I do believe in financial surveillance." And it's a moment like that.
There you go. The horse's mouth.
It's right there. You see that, yes, I love that he's anti-CBDC, but I hate that. I mean, I kind of hate that he won't read my work, but that's another issue. I hate that
we'll get him to subscribe to the Substack.
Yes. I hate that he supports financial surveillance, not realizing that that is creating the very thing that he stood against just moments before. So
what happened to the land of the free, the home of the brave? How do you say it?
the land of the free, the home of the brave. It's tough. It's changed a lot.
What's happening in the US? This is our last citadel in a way. I mean, El Salvador feels like a citadel right now, but it's
changed a lot. And really, I mean, the last 24 years, or 25, sorry, since the 9/11 attacks, it's been a huge change, but it's been brewing since before then. The Bank Secrecy Act dates back to 1970. And pieces of it date back all the way to 1945. And so, like we were talking about with that slow boil in Europe, the United States has suffered a similar issue. And it slow boiled through 2001 and then just ramped up. And it's nice.
Isn't it funny, though, Nick, that the dates that you were pointing there are coinciding with those very milestone events, the Bretton Woods in the 1940s, and then the depegging from gold in 1971, and obviously the wars in the Middle East and everything that happened around the petrodollar from that point on, and then obviously 9/11 and the secret. So it's kind of, you can see in the last century how that global agenda to further control humanity, to make it more subordinate to the different types of the one world government rules that they wanted to put in, have been ushering in. And unlike us individuals, governments, global organizations, and especially central bankers and those rich families have a very low time preference, and they think in decades and centuries. They don't think in days and months like us. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And one thing that you just made me think of that I'm not sure I've really put into words before is that these aren't just like these moments in time aren't just monuments in terms of being like markers in the timeline. It's also markers in human perspective, in the way that people think about issues. Those are the change points. And it's tough to recover from that when you have such monumental shifts, not just in the timeline in terms of history, but also how people are thinking about the future. And I think that is how we've gotten to such a dangerous place now, with people being willing to accept a lot of control and also openly propose a lot of control.
All right. This is this is where we're at, people. So are there any other points that you want to bring up related to maybe, I don't know, the IMF, the World Economic Forum that happened recently, some declarations or things that we've seen out of those events? I mean, the IMF, I have digested one of their panels called The Future of Finance.
I always knew you were an IMF secret agent.
Of course. It was one of the most like entertaining panels ever, seeing all those central bankers sitting there debating on how we have to move to digital currencies, and stablecoins are okay, cryptocurrencies are okay, CBDCs are okay, but Bitcoin is unbanked and you shouldn't,
I was not expecting that.
It's a bad idea. Oh yeah. Unbacked.
Well, there is one bit in recent news that's worth touching on, an announcement I should make on news, though, at the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
The head of the Banque de France made the rounds online, going viral in his exchange with Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, where he declared he trusts central banks much more than the private issuers of Bitcoin.
Private issuers. He doesn't even know how it works.
And what was particularly concerning is I had already been following his statements for the CBDC tracker. He had made 2 speeches earlier in the year. And in the course of the first 21 days of 2026, he not only got it wrong on Bitcoin, he also got it wrong on CBDCs, declaring that they were about to launch the world's first CBDC, which I invite him to check the tracker. At best, that's really bad. He also got US history wrong, trying to say that when the United States had free banks, these were banks issuing their own currency. So not US dollars. This was before that. Okay. They had their own paper notes. And he tried to say that this private system completely failed. What he left out was that it did fail. This is true. What he didn't mention was that they failed because of the laws and regulations in place. To give just one example, it was illegal for a bank to open a branch across state lines. Put differently, it was illegal to diversify your portfolio at the time. So they were susceptible to runs and falling apart because of that. So he got that wrong. And then he also got gold wrong, saying that gold is this inherent money because of the status granted by the state.
Oh, really?
Yes. But
incredible.
I do have an announcement to make regarding that. For any listeners, these are tough times. You might be looking for a job. You might want a new opportunity, shift things up a little bit. This might be hard for your listeners, though. But if anyone listening is ignorant about Bitcoin, ignorant about U.S. monetary history, ignorant about how gold works, ignorant about the world of CBDCs. Good news. The chair of the Banque de France announced today that he's stepping down. He is out of the job. So the position has opened up and you might just be qualified. So get those applications in, make sure you hit all those points because apparently that's what they're looking for. But unfortunately, for all the mistakes the head of the Banque de France made, he won't make any more. He'll be out now.
Oh my God. So he's out. It's formal?
Yep.
Okay.
He officially announced. I will give him some credit. It looks like he's going to a. If I read it correctly, it's a charity to help children. So.
Oh, good. Good. Let him go there.
It sounds like, by all accounts, he'll be doing something better for the world. So I do commend him on that, even though I do tease quite a bit. Good.
Let him go there. These people, if you think that this is just this guy, you're wrong. Most of the people in those positions are, I mean, mediocre is a compliment for them. Well, they're way less than mediocre. I mean, they are getting there not because of their economics knowledge or their I don't know, their intelligence. They're getting there because of the money and the power and the incentive structure to be compliant and do as you're told, be a good soldier, and you'll just keep your position.
I mean, just to make your point further, if anyone watches the clip of that exchange with Brian Armstrong, they'll see that everyone in the room was laughing when the central bank head said that he trusts central banks more than Bitcoin. But they weren't laughing at him for the mistake he made. They were laughing with him against the idea of Bitcoin being something serious. And that in and of itself was very troubling to see, because that, by all accounts, is supposed to be a room filled with experts, people who know how the world works, people know how money works. And we're really seeing anything but that.
I want to show this video.
The guarantee for trust is independence on central bank side. And we have a common mandate and we are accountable to that. But sorry to say that I trust more independent central banks with a democratic mandate than private issuers of Bitcoin, which have a very useful role. But
Bitcoin is a decentralized protocol. There's actually no issuer of it. So that's in the sense that central banks have independence. Bitcoin is even more independent. There's no country or company or individual who controls it in the world. And so anyway, I think it's a healthy competition because if people can decide which one they trust more, and I think it's actually the greatest accountability mechanism on deficit spending.
He's so smug. Do you see that? Like the way he laughs after he says this stupid thing he said.
It really says a lot. Almost more than the words that actually came out of his mouth. The reaction that you see. It's
hilarious. Private issuer.
It's almost unreal. And I'll be somewhat nicer than I probably should be. I think I'd be much more tolerant of this kind of exchange if we were doing this in 2013 or 2016. Right. I think I'd be much more understanding and patient, but it's 2026.
Yeah, give us a break. Yeah.
I mean, even grandmothers know at least the word Bitcoin.
Right.
And on the same note, I don't expect the general public to know deep history about gold, U.S. free banking, and the like. But if you're running a central bank, and if you're also opining on these issues, I expect a little bit.
You're in a freaking panel about monetary issues in the World Economic Forum. You want to hear something funny, Nick?
This isn't, exactly. We're not streaming from a bar where everyone is 12 drinks in, it's 3 a.m., and we're just riffing with each other. This is the World Economic Forum. Of all the criticism that I levy on them, at least hold yourselves to a better standard. It's
Nick, a few months back, I got a message from someone on LinkedIn, a private message saying, "Hey, Flat, I'm running the roundtables around cryptocurrencies in the World Economic Forum in Davos, and I would like to invite you to participate. And I'm like, oh, hey, hello. You clearly have not done your homework about me. I do not think you want me there. Because if I am there with no safeguards on my mouth, this is going to be funny. So, I didn't even answer him. I just
Although I will
posted this
say,
on
you would
X.
have been the highlight for me. That would have been,
Yeah, it
that
could
would
have
have been
been
well
funny.
worth it. But it's,
But I can't see myself going to these places. I just want to, unlive everyone. It's just not for me. I can't, like, morally, my heart will not stand it.
yeah. And it's tough. It's tough because I
Those
want to,
people are doing really evil stuff without, most of them don't even know that's the
what I was
kind of
about to
reality
say.
they're bringing about. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
want to give them grace. And
Yeah.
many times I try to, but there's only so many times that you can pass a blind eye and say, oh, they probably didn't mean it that way. Oh, it's probably not exactly what I'm interpreting it as. Oh, I must be missing something, before you realize, oh no, these people want complete control over our lives.
Yeah.
They want to try to establish that power hierarchy, and they're pretty much doing everything possible to make that happen. And
Yeah.
it just breaks my heart that is something that someone would dedicate themselves to, is taking control over others, taking their agency away. And
Exactly.
I don't know how you find
And
yourself on that
participating
path.
in this game of fiat that just continues to steal from people's lives and productivity. And, I have a lot of people on LinkedIn specifically following me, more than 20,000 followers. And in the last couple of years, many of them are from banking or politics or, all these worlds that we interface with because we're in the financial game. But we're on the other side of the spectrum in the financial freedom game. And so I get all these people following me. Many of them are like, crypto companies or Web3 or banking, financial institutions, whatever. And I don't know how they digest my content and how they continue following. But this one is for you guys. Like, if you are watching this right now and you're one of those people that are following me and trying to kind of understand, what is she on about? What is she doing in this space? Why is she so well regarded and being invited to all these conferences to speak and all that? It's because you guys are complicit with a system that takes or robs people of their freedom and their hard-earned money and productivity. It's called fiat. And whatever you guys are building, which is CBDC rails or cryptocurrencies that are complying with that stuff, is more of the same bad stuff that we, the people, don't need. We need to own what's ours. We need self-custody. We need freedom. We need, so if you're watching me trying to understand why this is happening, why does my voice become stronger and I rise, is because we need an antidote to you and what you guys are ushering in, which is a surveillance state and excessive control over our finances and our lives. So
You're here.
my little monologue.
It's tough because
you are around those people in DC all the time. How do you handle that?
I was just about to say that.
Please.
It's tough because I'm around a lot of folks who see that as the norm. And that's what I was talking about before, that I want to give grace, because to some people it's totally unquestionable that this is the way it works, that this is how it has to work, and everything needs to be crammed into this box. And I'm trying to show people that there is another path. There is another option here. And sure, it might be considered radical at first. It might be considered outside of folks' comfort zone, but that is a path worth carving out when we're talking about improving the lives of countless people, improving their freedom. that's a life that is worth dedicating to. And
100%.
it's definitely easier. It's definitely easier to go the route
To
of saying,
just
oh yeah,
follow, yeah.
let's just, everything's fiat, everything's regulated, everything's controlled, everything's surveilled. It's definitely easier to go that route. But some of the most rewarding things in life are the most challenging to get. And having your core freedom, the ability to make decisions over your life, is something worth doing, not just taking innovations in this world and cramming them into the old boxes. And to the point you were just saying, unfortunately, a lot of folks are trying to take amazing achievements, amazing innovations that truly are changing lives, and in the process of cramming it into that old box, it's losing everything that made it special. And really, it's just what we had before, but maybe slightly different. Maybe it has a catchier buzzword around it, but it's not really changing lives. And it's tough to watch that. I think more people are becoming aware of how important things like financial freedom and financial privacy are in a way that really we haven't seen before. I think in the last maybe 3 to 5 years, there's been a really big awakening to that. And I hope that only continues, because people are starting to realize they don't have to be tied down through the same old thing. A lot of central bankers will say that CBDCs are just the next evolution of money, but that's not right at all. They're not the next evolution of money.
Absolutely.
They're the next evolution of state control. And that's a very different thing.
Very different. Very different. Nick, well said. What do you make of the Samourai wallet case in that regard? I mean, we're seeing people that just want to innovate and build new financial freedom tools, and they're being sent to jail. Kiani's already in, and Bill is about to go in for 4 and 5 years, respectively. And this is heartbreaking and wrong. What's your take?
It's absolutely wrong, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. That's a very illustrative example of exactly what I'm talking about. Is you had innovators who wanted to build something that didn't fit in the box. Yeah. And because of that, they're getting the worst possible scenario out of it.
Yeah.
And I don't understand a lot of things about this administration, but I don't understand why the Trump administration has not intervened at this point, because it feels like something worth standing up for and taking a stand on, to say that this was wrong and that we do need to change the way that developers are treated, especially when they're trying to find the next frontier. And instead, it's really just been silence. And that's almost as heartbreaking as the penalties that they're currently facing.
Yeah, we're going to have Lauren Rodriguez, Kiani's wife, with us at the Women of Bitcoin Summit. She's going to speak. I've interviewed him. We're trying to give them as much support as we can. If you guys are not familiar with the case, please go watch my interview with Kiani, and then please sign the petition and donate, because I agree with you, it is ridiculous, and I don't understand also why the administration is not doing anything about it. But the fact that they're not doing anything about it makes me wonder, what is the true motive behind this? Are they trying to scare off others to have like a chill effect? And does this tie in with if we want to create a surveillance technocratic state, especially financially, and we want everything to go through the rails of ETFs, stablecoins, regulated exchanges, etc., KYC, then we want to psychologically show the population that the right way to behave or to be around this time is only through those rails. And the moment you step a little bit outside of it, prison awaits, or something bad awaits. Don't go there. Now, luckily for us, I mean, for you more than for me, because I'm not a US citizen, in the recent Clarity Act, the ability to self-custody your Bitcoin is protected. So at least, you can always do that. Thank God, something is left. But there's still like a psychological operation, in my opinion, to kind of, lead people down a very specific lane of how to use their digital money in the future.
Well,
what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right. The two lanes that I see it through are, I think the prosecutors absolutely wanted to make an example. The administration, I'm not as sure on, but I think you are right that at a broader level, that this kind of introduction of rules and this extreme punishment are not a coincidence. And while I am glad that there are some protections in place in the legislation created, I also think you're right that it's not enough when you see something like this, because yes, there might be some limited protections, but when you're operating on the forefront of technology, when you're really trying to advance things and take it to new levels, it gets into a gray area very quickly. And that was one of the big problems with this case, was having a gray area around what the law said was right and what the law said was wrong. And we've seen this in US history before. I won't go down the full rabbit hole, but with Operation Choke Point, using regulatory power, not to issue like a warrant or a court order or something like that to cut people off, but just to pressure under the threat of something like that to cut people off. It's really a similar process that anyone who sees this is going to be worried that in the United States, they're not safe. And frankly, they might not even be safe elsewhere. And that's a huge chilling effect. And the people who are going to suffer for that are the people who depend on some of these technologies, especially human rights defenders all over the world who need privacy protections. That's who suffers from this. And yet they never got a voice. They were never brought to the table to say, hey, how do you feel about this? They had to demand to make their voice heard. And it's tough to square what's going on with this. And I hope for a brighter day, but it's really a shame when you have something like this happen, and then you have the head of the Treasury openly saying that he supports financial surveillance and believes in it and thinks it's the thing to do. It's really tough to be optimistic amidst that.
Yeah, it is. If I zoom out and I look at the hypothesis on the table laid out by Simon Dixon, for example, for weakening the dollar, and everything that we're seeing right now is kind of the adverse reaction of that end game of weakening the dollar so that the US can pull back into a regional power rather than being the world hegemony or the world empire, then how does everything we talk about tie into that hypothesis of weakening the dollar? Like, are we witnessing the transitory phase between the fiat dollar to the digital dollar, and then everything that's happening is kind of preparing us for that? Are we seeing also, I mean, that would also help me decipher why the EU, for example, or the ECB is clamping down so hard on we need independence from the US, because if this is all orchestrated and this is what's going to happen anyway, and we're going into a multipolar world where the US is kind of pulling back to be a regional power instead of a world hegemony, then it just makes sense that the EU will go, oh, the US is too much of a threat for us right now. We have to detach. We have to protect ourselves from MasterCard and Visa, just as the excuses, right? But what they're really saying is we need to detach ourselves from the dollar, right? Or how do you see that?
It is very possible, because I mentioned MasterCard and Visa, but I will say also a lot of European officials will mention President Donald Trump at least a dozen times in these speeches because he's frankly a wild card, and they're worried about having a tether to a wild card. And so that's a big concern on their minds. And this might be another side of it, the idea of weakening the dollar and having that pullback. It's tough to say, though, because while I think the theory makes sense, it's hard to pull it into the world when there's so many different moving variables.
Yeah.
And that's not to say it's not happening either, but what I'm trying to say is it's tough to pull it into the real world without them just saying, yes, this is our policy, this is what we're doing.
Right.
Because there's so many different moving parts. And also President Trump has really taken a flood the field approach with a lot of his policy, where instead of just doing one change, he'll do 12 different changes. So that way the opposition is scrambling, trying to figure out, how do we combat this? How do we do anything? And then whatever makes it through is his success story. And so it's tough to decipher what the grand plan is when that's the strategy. But that's not to say it's not possible. It very much is possible.
I totally appreciate the work you're doing on continuing to surveil the surveillors. and
Ooh, I might need to put that on a hat.
I love it. Yeah, please do that. And work for us, the people, in preserving our financial freedom and making us more aware of what they're doing to steal some of our freedom away. Please follow Nick. Is it Substack X? Where else do you want people to go?
I'm on Substack, X, Nostr, and LinkedIn. Please do follow me on LinkedIn because I suffer from the same problem of too many central bankers. So I could use some variety.
But there are a lot of Bitcoiners there, you know? I'm surprised.
All are welcome on my side of LinkedIn.
Yes.
Because I've also found myself in a curious corner. But aside from those, also folks can find the tracker at hrf.org/CBDC tracker. Go play with it, explore it, find your country, your friend's country, your parents' country, see what's going on in the world. There are updates almost every day. I'm actually, after this call, going to be making a bunch of updates to it as well. So there's new stuff all the time. And please let me spare you from having to read the 100-page reports. I distill it down. That's our passion, you and I. But I know most people don't enjoy doing that. So
that's right. You just go to the tracker.
Yes.
Save yourself the time. We'll put a link to the tracker as well in the show notes. And go get Nick's book as well. Nick, amazing session. Thank you so much for all this information. This is super valuable. We'll do it again next quarter.
I'm looking forward
to it. So people can continue, tracking what's happening.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for having me on. This has been great.
All right, dear. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with us. Please take a minute to give this episode a like, a comment, and subscribe or follow. And please share it with your friends so they can also get value and choose to take some positive action in their lives. Till next time.